Two-time Hall of Fame inductees, Brent Godarzi and Marty Young. Back-to-back #1 trucking firm in the nation. Back-to-back best attorney and best law firm in East Texas.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Coaches Show here in Gilmer, Texas, here with the head coach and athletic director of the Gilmer Buckeyes, Coach Alan Metzel. And Coach, another week, congratulations on your 19th victory here as the head coach of the Gilmer Buckeyes. 1-0 in district. And, it's a neat season in that things kind of cool off, and it's kind of occurred to me to talk about all the seasons that are going on. You're not just the head football coach, you're the athletic director as well. So what else in the world of the Buckeyes is going on in terms of all the sports here with Gilmer?
Well, you've got cross country going. We've got Coach Ivy, who is working with our guys, getting them ready, and Coach Mandy Simpson coaches our girls, and they're both training those guys. I'll come into work early, pitch black, and I'll pull in our parking lot, and they're out there running the roads, got those flashing lights going up and down the streets of Gilmer. Their district track meet is coming up. It'll be here pretty soon, and so that's their point that they're working towards. So we've got that going and are excited about all the success that they've had so far. Move over, got our girls in volleyball from Vicki Davidson taking care of the lower levels, and she always does an incredible job of training up those girls and all the fundamentals. Our girls, when they get to high school, they know how to play because they've been under her. And so they've done well. I believe as of last week, our 8th grade girls were undefeated. So they've been doing well. Varsity JV freshmen in volleyball, we're in the middle of district right now and battling, trying to work to get into a playoff spot. So got a handful of things. And then, of course, you got junior high football, 9th grade JV football. So got a few things going, but we enjoy that.
Well, changes in the air, the seasons start to change, and lots of folks drive here on Bradford Street past the field house and see coaches up here working at all hours. Just kind of walk me through. We talked a little bit last week with Jeff here about the 3 basic types of chapters in the football season. But just kind of walk me through a calendar year in terms of life as a football coach and the chapters that you're managing here with your staff.
You bet. Well, we break it in, like you say, 3 parts. We've got our preseason phase, and when I say preseason, our pre-district phase. And so you've got the 2-a-day cycle and trying to get the warm-up and the build-up and then the scrimmages, getting us to our 5 pre-district games. Whenever we have a week, obviously we're here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, during the week doing all the different activities that we do. But then on the weekends we're up here too. Saturday mornings, we're grading film. We take a look at the night before's game. Every coach is going to look at every single position, and we're going to grade plus minus a 0 if it wasn't something outstanding or something terrible, which essentially grades as a minus. And so they're going to do that on every single rep. And so every single kid knows exactly how many points they've earned or had the opportunity to earn. And then we take a look at that. We're going to look at it, compile that as a defense. We're going to compile that as an offense. We also take a look at our special teams, find out how many yards, the hidden yards, punts and punt returns and so forth. The other night against Spring Hill, I think we won the hidden yardage by like 278 yards.
That's huge.
That's huge. Well, that's, for each 100 yards, you total it as 7 points. And so, you're trying to win all these various components of a game, and the more of those little areas you can win, obviously it's going to put you in a position to win the game. And so those are things that we are going to factor in on Saturday. We're going to write all those up. And then about noon or so is when we start looking at the opponent for the following week. And, by that time we're about half brain dead, from all night Friday night and then all the grading Saturday morning. So really it's just kind of a layering at that point. And we just kind of watch through, the Pittsburgh versus Pittsburgh versus Pleasant Grove. We're just going to watch through those games, take a look at who stands out, who are guys that are going to be problematic, big picture things. Are they an odd front? Are they an even front? What are they doing on offense? For example, they are very wadded up, their style of play on offense. So getting big picture ideas on Saturday. Sunday we come in, we have a staff meeting. As in our staff meeting, it takes usually about an hour, hour and a half, and every single position coach is going to give a report of their guys, how many plays people played, what their grade was, what each individual needs to do to get better, what the position needs to work on to get better, and we'll go around the room. Every single coach has that input. Each coordinator is going to then share things that we've got to improve on, things that look good, all from the previous game. And then we move into this coming week. And so at that point, we're going to talk big picture, what's the opponent run, et cetera. What are we going to do in our game planning that we think is going to take advantage, strengths, weaknesses, things we've got to hide, things we've got to attack. And then we go to work. And so we break up, we go to our offense, defensive room, and we start writing out the plan. You start planning practice. You've got to have that ready for Monday morning because we're on it early. Our guys are in the weight room at 6:45 in the morning. Monday morning we've got weight room and then practice. So we have to have everything ready. So a lot of people go, what are you doing on the weekend, y'all? Y'all just
there's not a couch in this building. I can attest to it because I've searched for one on a time or two,
sometimes
and it's not here.
Yeah. But it's every moment. We're not going to waste time because we all have families, and I've got coaches with young kids, and we are not going to waste time. But there's X amount of things that have to be done in order to be successful regularly, and obviously you got to have great players, but you got to have a great plan. You got to have it organized, the logistics of everything. We go through the schedule today. That'll be one of the things we do in the meeting, where we go through every single day. I'm talking in 5-minute increments.
Right.
So for the whole week.
So when people drive by and the Buckeyes are practicing and the scoreboard's on, there's actually periods,
yes,
14 in the normal practice, that you've broken everything up into 5-minute sections.
Every single practice is in 5-minute increments, and what we're getting done in those 5-minute increments for however long we're doing, whatever it is we're doing. So all that has to be planned, and that's what we do on the weekends. And then we go home and hopefully we see them and kiss them before they go to bed.
And sleep.
Yeah.
Well, being a coach's son, I realized that, it's really a lifestyle, especially during football season. And then on top of that, you've got coaches blowing through here from colleges and kids getting recruited because obviously success breeds success. And, I think I looked in the notes and since 2000, obviously since you've been here, and this isn't your first rodeo here, since 20 years, we've got an 85% winning percentage overall. We're ranked number 15th in the state of Texas in the history in terms of 720 some odd wins now, and hopefully that list grows. But in the chapters, you've got the first part of the season when people ask you, we even talked about it this weekend, hey, from a scheduling standpoint, you got all that to do. The UIL every other year. This is coming up with what's called a realignment year, which means that the district competition. Now, this part that we're in now, the district, you don't get to choose your opponents, correct?
No, that's
so
correct.
Walk us through a little bit of that.
So, 2 years ago, we went to the realignment. We were given our teams. We were given the order that we played them in. We were given, when our bye would be, all those kind of things. That's set. So that has nothing to do with us or any other team in their district. And like you say, this coming February, we'll redo that. So that next year, who knows, will be in our district. Also, as you mentioned, this is the time I'm calling coaches because you're trying to, the best you can, set up next year's pre-district schedule. And, if you've had some success, sometimes it's harder to get teams to agree, and, you're having to beat the bushes a little bit trying to set things up. But we're in the works on that. All that, you can have it all set up and walk in that day and people go, no, I'm not playing you. So,
or COVID, sorry.
Whatever. So, there's a lot of factors, and the best you can do is plan and then try and have a plan B and C and D and E and, adjust from there. But those things are things we're doing. Plus, you're thinking ahead of getting, buses scheduled. You hope for the playoffs and sites to play at.
Junior high games, and
exactly.
A lot of people don't realize that obviously with district, of course, but also during pre-district, who your lower level teams are playing may or may not have to do with Friday night.
Absolutely. Well, like last week, Spring Hill only had one sub-varsity in their high school, and so we were able to find Grace Community. They needed a Thursday night game, so their JV came and played our freshman team. And so they played them, and then our JV played Spring Hill's JV. So, you're just always having to fill in the puzzle, so to speak, and it's pretty fluid.
Well, lots happening behind the scenes. Obviously, I think fans would be interested because most people don't know. We take it for granted when you've kind of been behind the scenes of everything that goes on, and that pile is, as tall as me and you, which is not saying much, but that's still a tall pile.
There you go.
But let's talk a little bit about where we are in the line of things now. This was our first district win.
Right.
So we're now 1-0 in district, and we always say on the broadcast, everybody starts 0-0.
Right.
What are the implications now in terms of seeding for the playoffs, given where we were last year, who we played, our run to a hopeful state title and maybe seeing Carthage again and all that? What role does the now play? And then let's talk a little bit about a Spring Hill type game. It was kind of amazing that last year, a 59-13 victory, and I went back and looked at it with Joe Dodd. Shout out to Joe, who provides us with great stats every single week. That Pigskin Prep predicted the exact amount of points that we would win by last year. And this year, they predicted we would win 41-0. We won by 41 points at 56-15, but how did they see us and we see them and everybody's watching us and we're watching everybody else? The strategy behind that, given district in the playoffs, take us through a little bit of that.
Well, the way we see it, or the way, we've done it here for 20 years, is it's got to be, first and foremost, your eyes are, on nose to the grindstone, eyes on the opponent. This is who we're playing this week, and that's what matters. So from a standpoint of making sure the team is locked in, that's, I think, the most critical part. From a coaching standpoint, you have different viewpoints depending on your job. So the position coach, their job is to make sure that every one of these guys is locked in and they know the game plan and so forth. The coordinators have to look at the game plan from the standpoint of this game, but they're also looking at, okay, in the second round, we are going to play so-and-so potentially. In the fourth round, you potentially could play this team and so forth. And so, at some point, you may play a Salina, like round 5. Well, they're going to run the 10-1 and go man-free. Well, you better be working on man-free things now and not wait till week 15 to start working.
Yeah, receivers getting off press coverage, that type of thing.
The quarterback throwing with a guy, right there on him and so forth. So if you're playing teams that play zone predominantly from now till then, and then all of a sudden you're trying to work these man routes, well, you're not going to do very well. So they're looking at, okay, let's make sure that as we're working for who we're going to play Friday, we're working in our one-on-ones, our two-on-twos, our pass skill, we're getting that look too. In pieces, in doses. So those are things that you've got to look at big picture wise. Now, knowing that, like last year, we prepared for things like that for Salina, and then you end up playing Graham because Graham beat Salina. So those things can happen, but you have to be able to stay in a sense, be able to cover a broad spectrum of looks and not narrow yourself down and then all of a sudden try and fix it in a week.
Yeah, it's interesting because people, I know they approach you a lot more than they approach me, but making an assumption that there's a method behind what seems to be the madness of the outside, especially when you get into a game like in the third quarter of this past week's game. So you're doing a lot more than just getting through the third quarter of the Spring Hill game when you're playing 22 guys on defense and 18 guys on offense.
Absolutely.
And talk a little bit about that in terms of keeping the train rolling. Getting 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, keeping them going. If any of you have any of them at home, it's hard to keep them going in the next 15 minutes, much less for the marathon that starts essentially in August 1st, and that's after summer workouts that last all the way to Christmas.
Correct. Well, I tell you, it was something when I came here that was somewhat of a culture shock to me of learning that week 8 is halfway. A mindset, and that I'd hear Coach Traylor, some of the guys that came from Jacksonville, and then when Matt came in 03, and they had been at Jacksonville and they played around 4 and those kind of things. One of the things that you find as you play into, it's really week 13. It's the third week where the fatigue of the year begins to set in on coaches and on a team, and you can be watching film. Everybody loves making the playoffs, and they have cups in the fence, and they have their parade for a couple of weeks, and then most people are like, okay, that was good. They say they want to go past that, but it's tiring. And so you begin watching on film, and you're going, those guys, they're a little tired of playing. You can just tell on the film. And so there's a mindset that has to be changed, that we're halfway at week 8, whereas a lot of schools, they're already getting ready to play basketball. And
by the way, we just passed week 6.
Correct.
We're
So
still
not
2
even-
weeks away from being
Right,
halfway.
From this halfway, in the mindset of getting to a goal of a state championship. And so, you can talk about it all you want, but it takes time. For example, last year, you have all these freshmen and all these JV guys that came up and practiced all the way through the state championship. Well, that's part of how it happens. Once the further you go, the more you're stretching them, the more you're preaching it, the more as a coach you've got to taper practices from a time standpoint where they don't feel like it's just punishment that they're playing. We hopefully by week 13 and 14, you don't have to do everything quite as long. You can taper that and up the intensity a little bit. So there's things to do that we've learned through the years of how to gauge playing that long. And that's why a lot of times you see teams that go the distance tend to be the teams that continue to go to be the distance, because they
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
They
Right.
learn how to do it.
And the fact that you got such a long time for younger kids, because hey, it's like anything in life, the longer you practice it, the better you should get at it.
Sure.
And people are starting to understand the concept of why is Gilmer always Gilmer and Carthage is always Carthage, and those teams that tend to get there are always there.
Right.
Well, because they practice a lot longer year after year
You're
after
getting
year.
6 more games of practice for kids that aren't even on the field. So they come back, 1 with a mindset, 2 they've been in those stadiums, they've seen it take place. Some of them have suited up and gone down on special teams or even found a little role, and so that begins to build it. So
Yeah, Ashton.
Ashton
We
has,
made the comment
absolutely.
and we marvel at his ability, and we've got so many kids with so much ability, but people forget that Ashton didn't really even come up to the varsity until the playoffs last year.
Correct. Played JV for 10 weeks and came up as a freshman or a sophomore on the varsity as a week 11, and then we had an injury, and then away he went.
Well, I'm just glad we have another year on his contract. But that said, let's talk a little bit about Spring Hill for this past week and some of the things that you liked and wanted to show.
You bet. We've got some clips here of the game. You're going to take a look here. This is our first touchdown. It's an RPO, run pass option. You're going to see Rowan Fluellen out here on the slot. Brandon sees that there's an opening out there, and he flips the ball out. Rowan makes a great catch. Excellent adjustment. Ball's a little bit behind him, and then runs it in for a touchdown. So got us going there. Here you're going to see us on defense. You're going to see Matt Burton get some real pressure on the quarterback, which makes him have to throw the ball pretty quick, get it out, and then you're going to see Keith Rockwell and Michael Colbert converge on the back for a negative gain on a pass. So that
Doesn't happen often.
Doesn't happen a lot. So excellent job by those guys getting pressure. Now we're back in the red zone, and we're gonna run a route with our inside guy up in the slot, and it's Cody Guidry, and Cody's going to run through the safety who's standing over him, and we're going to hit Kendall Jackson that I have circled here. So we're going to run through. You'll see here goes Cody, and he's going to pull that safety right into the middle, and Kendall's going to go right where they were. And nice easy catch, throw and catch, and into the end zone.
Now, we talked during the broadcast, and I tried to kind of stop to do kind of the inside football. That's a Steve Sarkisian concept that's been around now for 5 or 6 years, that one receiver goes and clears out. You see it almost a basketball concept where one guy goes through and it creates space for the second guy. Talk about the timing in terms of what all has to really happen to make that play look as easy as a fan's perspective, saying, well, that guy was wide open.
Right. Well, first of all, Cody had to run a great route.
Exactly.
He had to sell it to get that guy to cover him. And then Kendall he couldn't get there too fast, or one guy can cover 2. And so, like you say, there's a timing, there's a rhythm of the play, and it has to do with how, obviously through a lot of practice, him getting the right width and the right running speed and so forth to get in what we call the wake, like a skier. They're going to get in behind that boat, and he's just following right where the player in front of him left from, and it makes it work out pretty good.
It looks easy when it's done correctly, right?
Correct. No doubt. All right, here we are on defense again. Spring Hill had gotten down inside our 10-yard line. They had a holding call. It moved them back a little bit. So now they're third and pretty long, and you're going to see Derek Borda and Matthew come around both edges, and they about knock each other out on the play. They really put it on that quarterback. It pushed them way back, which then put Spring Hill in a position where they had to kick a long field goal, and it was no good. So that was a big momentum thing in the first half by our defense. Here again, you see us on defense, and you can see Rowan communicating back there in the back end, which is something we've really been working on here as of late, trying to make sure, we talked about it in the Lindale game, making sure we're all on the same page. You're seeing here, I just thought the front seven did a great job. I'm gonna put it from the end zone view of just getting penetration. Watch the linebackers, Kendall Jackson and Jose, and then looks like Keith Rockwell as well, along with our D-line.
Well, you talk about the obvious things to see from a fan's perspective. You don't really notice the fine things, but being able to do that from an odd front, from 3 down linemen, really plays to our strengths in this year. We talked a little bit about last week about how we just match up better because we're so much bigger and stronger. We don't really realize how much keys, not just in terms of the defense, but really the whole team's, how many plays we get on offense determines how fast we get off the field on defense.
Correct.
And how much comes down to really life in the trenches with those 3 big guys up front. And when you got 3 that can create havoc for 5 trying to block them, what can you do with those other guys?
Well, now you're able to, first of all, get more skill guys on the field because those guys are so big and handling it. So now you can put, like Cody Guidry, when we moved to outside linebacker from safety. So now you just got more athletic at your outside linebacker position. And they're better cover guys. They can cover more space and so forth. And so if you're not as big up front in the trenches, well, then you're probably going to have to get outside backers who are bigger to hold up because more is going to come to them. So the group that we've had has really elevated our athleticism overall. So it's definitely been a benefit. You see here, I've got circled Jay Rockwell. We're gonna throw a deep post route to him here. He does a great job. Again, it's another one of those plays where you're getting in the wake of another player. I'll show it here on the wide. Our inside receiver is going to run at the safety and break it out, and then he comes up underneath him, and we hit him in the opening. Brandon does a great job here. I went ahead and circled him here on the end zone view. He looks off the safety. Critical part here because our receiver is going to pull the other safety. So his job, by his eyes, is to stare down the safety and keep him over there and not moving over to where Jay's going to catch the ball. He also gets a little pump in there, which moves the linebackers out of the way, throws it right over the top, and hits Jay for a big gain.
Yeah, Brandon is only the 5th guy in school history now this past week to have gone over 5,000 passing yards. You're talking about Tanner Barr, you're talking about Poppy Brown, you're talking about a guy named Stump Godfrey, who's the best that's ever done it under your tutelage here as his quarterbacks coach. His evolution, obviously he's committed to University of Texas San Antonio. Coach Traylor knows it when he sees it.
Right.
But just in terms of the level, like the finite things that you're talking about, they're the little things that he's been able to do. I texted him the other day and reminded him that it was literally less than 400 days ago that he had his first start against Pleasant Grove, where those weren't the things he was exactly doing at that point.
Trying to remember the game. Trying to remember who was running what pass route and everything else, no doubt. And now he's in command. You know, he can tell every receiver what to do on every single play. He can tell the running backs what to do on every single play. He knows where his hot reads are. He knows, depending on the pass protection, he knows who to look for. He can read progressions. He's in command. And so when you can do what you just saw in that last play where I know I'm throwing over here, so I'm going to manipulate this safety and this linebacker so I can come back and he'll be more open. You're playing at a really high level.
Well, and then the play that he makes with his feet to escape, I don't know if it's on film, but the first down he picks up to Parker Gillow, throwing off his back foot and the arm strength that he showed off there, that's a 25-yard pass on a line in a window about that big.
Put it right on a line.
Yeah, it makes a coach's job probably a lot easier when you've got that guy developed that is touching the ball every play.
Absolutely. And we're working his little brother too.
We'll talk about that in a second, I'm sure.
Talent. Okay, here we are. I put this one in. This is Michael Colbert at running back, and he scores. Good run by Michael, but I put it in predominantly for the O-line.
You're right.
Because, I mean, any of us in this room could have run through this particular hole. Watch our right tackle and our right guard. They're going to go out and just create this huge hole, and then Amaro Arona is going to pull around and take care of the linebacker. And so Michael, I mean, he had to go score. There's just a huge hole in there, and just wanted to give the offensive line some props there.
As much as we talk about during broadcast as the defensive line has done, it's almost the same effect with the offensive line, that you've seen just huge light-year strides that they've made. And not just from a running game standpoint, but the protections have been outstanding, especially this past week.
Right, yeah. Brandon was in position to be able to go through multiple reads. You know, he was able to look and wait and let things develop. They played pretty high, and so we took a lot of the lower routes this past week. But he had plenty of time to be able to make his choices, and that's always good for a quarterback when he's not feeling that pressure. Here we are on defense again. Our guys are swarming to the ball. Really like how you just see a lot in this week, white jerseys running to the ball, but you've got that huge push up the middle. Here come the linebackers, defensive linemen controlling the line of scrimmage. When your front here's I think this is Kendall and Keith right here, that they're playing off our defensive front, and then just maul the running back. That's what you want.
And not a single blue jersey offensive line touch them on the way.
That's because they're having to block those three, who are really good. So we like that. All right, here is Dustin Morrow. Dustin's one of our younger guys that's working his way out on the field, and you're going to see him get a fumble recovery here. I circled him. Matt gets penetration. This is a read play where the quarterback's trying to decide if he should give it or keep it. And with Matt standing like 1 foot away from him, he just gives it. And the running back's like, no.
I don't want it.
And so Dustin got the ball, big recovery for us, and we're able to go back on offense. All right, here we go. Offense, I circled here. Watch Jarrett Ritter on this play. This is the long run that LaDalen has, and we'll focus on him and Jay here in just a second. But it's hard to see in the stands. So watch Jarrett here as he gets his block initially, and then watch him work up. Here he is still.
Second level block.
Watch him keep working and keep working. You know, those are some things that I wanted to be able to point out where guys are in the trenches and they're making these things happen. You know,
Jarrett particularly, not only does he have to worry about consistently snapping the ball, whether it's cold, wet, you sweat it on the ball, there's a wet spot on it, whatever.
300-pound nose guard.
Yeah, you only get called out. That's, the mamas and the daddies are the only ones not watching the ball on this play. But really, this is why the play works.
Correct. And so here's LaDalen, and he gets out in the open. Jay does a great job of getting after that corner and giving him somebody to work off of. LaDalen played it perfect and just walks into the end zone there. So great effort by a whole lot of guys that made that work. And then I had to put the hustle down here by this is Will Blakely. I've got him circled here. Watch how fast he gets down the field. Will typically wins our race to the 40. That's one of the things we champion each Monday morning at our meeting on special teams is the race to the 40 and who wins that the most times. Well, you can watch him here. He's going to go flying down the field, and the ball lands in front of the Spring Hill returner, and here he is right there to scoop it up, and we get the ball on about the 20-yard line there. So great effort on his part.
Yeah, and of course he plays corner, and there's so many guys that are doing so many things and playing so many roles. And obviously, we've only been playing Spring Hill since 1950.
Oh my.
And obviously we've gotten the better of it for, let's just call it the last couple of decades. But they're a known quantity. Mm-hmm. You know what's coming. They know what's coming. Everybody knows what to expect. Even Pigskin Prep predicts the score accurately. So a lot of people know in those districts, the Glade Waters, the Spring Hills, the Pittsburghs, those teams that we seem to see off and on. But going into a game like next week, where you have an offense that is the polar opposite of what you've seen pretty much all year,
right?
How do those things in the middle of a district race start to play a role in terms of those role players like Will and those guys and how there may be some weeks like you saw that Jay had a lot of targets early in the game, not Rowan, because you know that there's eyes on Rowan, they're cheating the safety over him, you're going to take what the defense gives you, and how these kids get adjusted to the fact of knowing that, you know what, it's a long season, and I'm going to have my week where what I'm doing matters the most to the team. That
changes every single week. It really does, of how we're going to attack, whose role is going to be more out in the forefront than others, and that takes, to me, the most important aspect of building a team, and that's selflessness. When we're in a culture that is so self-oriented and what's on your social media and it's all about you and so forth, this group, just like last year's group, they're buying into, if I set that aside, we're going to do really well. And the personal things come and the personal things go, and they always will. But the things that are special are as a team. And those are the things that last, and 20 years down the road, that's what they're always going to remember, is what their team did. And right now I'm just thrilled that the guys, they're not worrying about it a bit. A few weeks ago we had played Henderson, and we felt like Rowe could hurt them with some of the things he could do and some of the things they were doing, where he got it a handful of times and he had a big stat line. Then there's going to be another game that we played right after that. He caught one pass. He was fine. He was fine. Now he took care of it. I think he picked a pass and ran a kick back and whatever else. But he wasn't worried about, well, how many times did they throw me the ball? That kind of a thing, where you've got guys that understand my role. I'm gonna have different things to do each week. Yeah. And they're buying into it.
Well, now, so here's a loaded question that's unscripted. Okay, so texting back and forth. Congratulations to the Coach Traylor and Coach Traylor at UTSA.
Absolutely.
Off to a school
excited.
Record 6-0 start. I know so many of us are watching.
Right.
So we're texting back and forth, and we talked about the shootout he was in last night in terms of Western Kentucky and playing an air raid offense and going back and forth. And one of my comments was, this is why when you look back, you have those games where possessions matter, like Kilgore or Canton or any of those games in the past 20 years that we played when they were here. And in terms of understanding, there's a big difference between playing 15-minute quarters and 60 minutes total and 12-minute quarters and 48 minutes total. So here's the loaded question.
Okay.
Given all of these kids in one football, do you sometimes wish for 60 minutes, or do you more sometimes wish for 30?
Well, there's some games you want to shorten, no doubt, and for whether you're trying to keep their offense off or whatever the case may be. But there's times where you wish that you could spread it around even more. But having said that, like in our game the other night, 12 different guys caught a pass,
right,
and 9 different guys ran the ball. That's pretty rare. For any school to have that many people get to touch the ball. And so we work hard at it. Now, we understand there's some weeks where that number's going to shrink because it has to, but we're always looking to make sure that we're keeping guys excited about being in practice and knowing that they'll have a chance at some point in the game. And it may be not in this game, it may be in that game, but it keeps them hungry.
Well, I've had, of course, as you have, a gajillion conversations with Stump Godfrey. And to this day, and of course he won everything there is to win at the high school level. Just wasn't any kudos individually that had left to earn. Mr. Texas football. And the thing that he says he was most proud of is that his senior year, he threw touchdowns to 29 touchdowns to 19 different guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a mindset. And then anytime you would talk to him after the game, he was always talking about the offensive line, or he was talking about his running backs, or he was talking about, that's what you want. That's what this is about. And like I said, it's the culture that we're trying to create. And it's a work in progress, and we got tons of work to do, but we're working at it.
You get to start over every year with a new group of kids, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Well, we appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about Pittsburgh and what to expect. The home game next week. We've just got a few left before we start the third of this odyssey with the playoff phase. So let's talk a little bit about Pittsburgh and what to expect from them.
Pittsburgh has a new head coach this year, Coach Abram. He started out, I think, back in Sulphur Springs. He was the head coach at Paul Pewitt. He's been the head coach at Mahia, and now is the head coach at Pittsburgh. He's kept his offense that he's run since Paul Pewitt, which is a really wadded up, everybody's up in there tight, and it's a grinded out 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Very physical type game. And, their record has not shown, I don't think, the way they're progressing. I think it shows you that they played Pleasant Grove like they did the other night and lost 21-14.
And we're in it until the last possession.
Had a chance to go to tie the game. So they're moving. One thing, it's always tough whenever you take over a place. You're putting your imprint on it, but then his style of play is so radically different from what they've done. That's another component to have to get to where he wants it to be. So I know he's in works, of bringing that around. They've got some athletic guys. I've told you specifically Christian Bates, their linebacker and tight end. He's one of the best players in East Texas. Huge nose guard that, we'll have to count for. So there's a number of things, and they've got a bevy of running backs that they can give it to and break one at any time. So we will see this as our guys will. We'll watch the film. They'll know exactly who we have to stop, who we have to attack, those kind of things this week as we prepare. And we're going to try and get better this week.
Well, and final question before we wrap up. Obviously in Spring Hill, that's the case. It's going to be the case this week in Pittsburgh. It's going to be the case with LE, and then it's going to be obviously with every case. Mm-hmm. Gilmer tends to be everybody's Super Bowl. So we're taking everybody's best shot. Where there's lulls in the season for them, and then maybe they're only going to play a 10-game season, and they're not going to make the playoffs most likely. You still got Gilmer on the schedule. You got one chance to be that team that knocked Gilmer off. Mm-hmm. Coach Traylor used to say pressure is a privilege.
You're right.
How do you see that culturally working in the mindsets of 15, 16, 17-year-old kids?
Well, first of all, you're correct, and I think from the standpoint of people get up for us, Pittsburgh always has played us well. They love, I guess, just being down 271. Our kids know each other and so forth, so it's always a big game for us in Pittsburgh, kind of like us in Gladewater to some extent. And so I know they're going to give their best. There's no doubt about it. For our guys, I think, what we are trying to condition them is, whoever is on schedule. Last week, Spring Hill was on the schedule. We're playing ourselves. Are we practicing at a standard? And that has nothing to do with the level that the other team is. Can be Carthage. Are we moving up from where we were last week? That's the goal. And so whether it's Spring Hill, it's Pittsburgh, it's Liberty, Ilo, Pleasant Grove, Salina or Carthage or whoever else, that's what our mantra will be this week again.
And what a great life lesson to make sure that it's not about who's watching. It's about knowing that you're doing your best and getting better.
Right.
Well, we appreciate your time, Coach, on a Sunday afternoon. As you laid out, there's lots that's going on here in the field house. We appreciate all the fans. We get into the district play, a home game. We've got 2 more home games left. So we need that Buckeye Army out into Jeff Traylor Stadium here to root the Buckeyes on to a second, hopefully. We're defending the district championship. That hadn't been the case in a long time. And we're on a new district winning streak now that we have started afresh last year. So that means a lot, and then on into the playoffs. So we wish you a great week. Take care of everything down here, and we appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get Jeff Rash off the beach and back here next week.
Sounds good.
We appreciate it. See you next week.